I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
This is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast where dinner tonight is going to be a local disaster, because this week we listened to Master. Unintentionally rhymes with disaster. That wasn't intentional, I promise.
The Master of Disaster, written by Joseph Lidster, the Master of Disaster.
I mean, he is. Directed by Gary Russell.
And released in October 2003.
The Disaster Master. So yeah, the final audio that we're going to listen to for potentially like 3 years, so...
I mean, I'm sure we'll intersperse some audio.
Yeah. I'm just saying potentially, if we don't listen to another audio till we catch up with the TV show, it could be almost 3 years.
Yeah. But we're probably not going to do that.
Probably, but you never know.
Yeah, you never know.
But not the final thing we're doing in this jaunt through the dark
history.
Years. Yeah, this jaunt through Doctor Who history.
Yeah, that last thing would be the book we're reading next week.
Yeah, plus those 2 other episodes on the other things.
Yeah. Potentially one of the best Doctor Who stories ever written.
Potentially. I'm only 3 chapters in, so...
Chapter 1 was weak.
Chapter 1 was pretty weak.
Chapter 2 was one of the best in the whole book, in my opinion, and after that, it's just golden throughout the entire thing.
Chapter
2, or I don't know if it was chapter 2, but the one where he gets kidnapped by the blue dog thing.
That was chapter 3.
Yeah, okay, 3. 3 was one of the best.
I think that was chapter 3.
That's a discussion for next week. The discussion for this week is Master.
Yeah, this audio.
And the Master, who's in this.
Unsurprisingly.
I went into this thinking there was going to be some kind of twist where, like, he's not actually the Master, and they kind of set that up for, like, 1.5 parts. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I still really like this audio.
It was okay. There's a lot. There was a lot I liked about it. There was also a lot I didn't like about it. But yeah,
I do feel like it was a little bit drawn out. I feel like that's going to be one of your criticisms, at least in part 4. I feel like that. But anyway, the first time I listened to this, which was over a year ago, I didn't know what Jeffrey Beaver sounded like at all. So I actually didn't know who the Master was supposed to be in the story till like part 3, when the Doctor tells the story about the bully. It's
pretty obvious that, like, they call him Master.
But yeah, but that's like a clever play on the fact that
I know,
it's
but
just she's the servant and he owns the house.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you know he's the Master, it's like pretty clever. Like, oh, she's calling him the Master. But like when you don't know, you just assume she's calling him the Master because it's his house and she's his servant. At least that's what I assumed.
Well, he goes by the John Smith alias, so I thought it was pretty obvious that he was either the Doctor or the Master.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then when Sylvester McCoy showed up as the Doctor, and then I was like, okay, he's the Master. But anyway, it starts with a couple seconds, probably like 10 or 15 seconds actually of silence, and I was like, wait, what the heck is going on? So I turned the volume up really loud because I thought I was missing something, and then all of a sudden this voice goes, "Can you hear me?" And I was like, yes, because I just cranked up the volume.
I didn't do that because I just always assume that audio tracks start with silence for some reason. I don't know why I assume that. I also just assume audio tracks end with silence for some reason.
It's not really true.
It's just not
Neither
always
of those
true.
Are really true,
but I just assume it anyway.
Okay.
There's a Billy Joel song that I'm completely forgetting what it's called right now, but I really like it. But it starts and ends with cricket noises because it's supposed to be about the Vietnam War. So it starts with crickets and then there's helicopters. But if you don't know that, it starts with silence and you're like, what's going on? And then you might do the same thing you did and crank up the volume and the helicopters come in and then, rip your eardrums.
Yeah. So this voice starts off its entire run, I guess. It appears a lot and is tormenting John Smith, who's the master of the house. It's telling him to It's telling him to kill. It's destroy.
It's also tormenting everybody else. There's a part in part 2, I think, where it's tormenting Jacqueline, and then it also torments Victor in part 3.
Yeah. So Victor and was Jacqueline his wife?
Yeah, Jacqueline was his wife, and Jade was the maid.
They're visiting Dr. John Smith for dinner.
There's actually also a framing narrative in the story, which
Yeah,
is
I forgot
unique
about
for
that.
a full cast audio. But Sylvester McCoy's doctor is telling this story to
A hitman.
an assassin of some sort.
Kind of a weird setup. I mean,
Yeah,
it
because that's how it
wasn't.
starts. After that voice, you cut to the doctor telling
Yeah.
the story to the hitman.
I mean, I guess it's not actually funny. But to me, it was sort of just like a funny and fun kind of thing where it's like, hey, I'm telling this story to a hitman who's about to kill someone. Like, how often do you see that? Almost never.
Yeah,
Probably.
I feel like it's supposed to kind of be a humorous almost setup, but then later on, it's not really that humorous
No.
anymore.
And the hitman has like this really bad Italian, I think, accent.
For me, it sounded kind of Eastern European, and because of that, all I could think of was that one guy who assassinated a president that I don't remember which one. And it
Of the
wasn't.
U.S.?
Yeah, it wasn't Kennedy or Lincoln, or he attempted to assassinate a president, but he was like of Eastern European descent or in that area. So that's all I could think of when I heard his voice. I just assumed that this guy was going to try assassinate the president, but then later on, Death is like, oh, there's Union Jacks everywhere, so that's not true either. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, so the doctor's like, hey, you don't really want to kill this guy. And the guy's like, no, actually, I do. I want to get paid. The doctor's like, let me tell you this story. And he's like, all right.
Well, it's more like the guy's like, are you going to try convince me not to do it? And the doctor's like, I'm just going to tell you the story, and then you can decide if you want to kill the guy or not. And the guy's like, I guess. I guess I don't have a choice.
So he starts telling the story, and Victor and Jacqueline go over to John's house for dinner.
And he lives in the town of Perfugium.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was a real place, but I was guessing it wasn't.
It's not. But I looked it up afterwards, and as it turns out, Perfugium is Latin
for
asylum or safety.
Whoa,
So
deep. No, okay, no,
it's not really deep, but it does play into the story.
Yeah, so they meet the maid, Jade.
She's not named Jade because it's a funny play on maid, but she's named Jade for a reason, as you find out later.
I didn't know what the reason was. I still don't. So.
Well, I'll explain it later because it's a spoiler.
Maybe I missed it. It was kind of zoned out in part 4. Part 4 was kind of...
Part 4 was really long. Part 4 was 42 minutes.
Anyway, I think we find out through some dialogue and stuff that Victor is like the chief of police or something.
Yeah, he's the chief inspector.
Yeah, and there's been some murders in town, like 13 murders of prostitutes, and one random other person.
Yeah, the most recent murder was a random person.
Who may or may not have been a prostitute, as we find out in the dialogue also.
Yeah, we also find out that Inspector Victor thinks that potentially the latest victim was mistaken for a prostitute because of where she was. Because apparently she was at the halfway house.
The wrong place, the wrong time. It's collateral damage.
Kind of sucks for her. She was at the halfway house that Jacqueline runs.
Yeah.
So
they meet up with John.
Apparently it's John's 10th birthday, quote unquote. It's like his 10th anniversary of showing up in Perfugium with no memory of who he was before.
Yeah.
And they just call it his birthday because he doesn't know when his birthday is.
Another character with amnesia. Okay, actually, no. Doctor Who is actually pretty good about not throwing in 25 characters with amnesia, like a lot of other stories.
Now I kind of want them to write
a
a story where it's just
everyone has amnesia.
Yeah, no. They should show the Doctor regenerating, but not show who he regenerates into. And then in the next story,
yeah, that'd be cool.
And then the next story have a story where it's just like a facility of people who all have amnesia, and then one of them's the Doctor, and they don't know who's the Doctor.
Yeah, that would be really cool. See, we really
which means
should be in charge of Doctor.
Which means they'll never do it. So, oh well. Anyway, so they're celebrating his birthday. Apparently, these are John's 2 closest friends in the town.
Yeah, I feel kind of bad for him because even before things start to deteriorate, they don't really seem like great friends, honestly.
No, they seem pretty terrible.
I mean, obviously later you find out Victor is like really jealous of John, and Jacqueline is super in love with him, so that's already a recipe for disaster. But even before that starts to play into things, they don't really seem that close.
No. Yeah, well, so first, I think one of the first things we find out is that the house is supposedly haunted.
By the previous owner's ghost or something that the previous owner did, whose name was Wollstonecraft. I thought it was going to be like some historical thing with like Mary Wollstonecraft, but it wasn't. It was just some dude.
Yeah, so apparently John just got this house like recently when Wollstonecraft died.
Yeah,
and Jade offed himself or something.
Jade was his maid before she became John's maid.
Yes, and there's a cat who belonged to Wollstonecraft who now belongs to John. John's like, I can't get rid of it because it was in the damn will. Which doesn't mean you can't get rid of it now. I mean, the will just said you had to give it to John. Unless the will says John has to keep this cat for 20 years or otherwise take the house away from him. It's kind of a dick move, but anyway.
Just hire a hitman to get rid of the cat.
Yeah, that's who the hitman that the doctor's talking to is going after. It's the cat.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the book we're reading next week, dogs pretty
rule
important.
Everything.
Yeah.
Dogs with human hands.
Yeah.
Just terrifying, by the way.
Yeah, it is.
So
they kind of just talk for a little bit. They talk about the supposedly supernatural things that are going on, and Victor's like, nah, there's nothing supernatural going on here, which
he's kind of denying all the evidence that's right in front of him, especially the appearance of the mysterious stranger who gets struck by lightning when he shows up.
Yeah, that's at the end of part 1. Well, they start playing this game where they're supposed to commune with spirits or something.
Yeah, I kind of imagine it like a Ouija board, basically.
Yeah, I don't remember how they described it exactly, but I think it was a circle of stones, and there's a drinking glass in the middle, and you all have to touch it or something. I don't know.
And there's letters coming out of it.
Yeah.
And the letters coming out are DOCT. I kind of wish they had made it spell out Doctor Who, because that would have been more interesting than it spelling out Doct, because there's already a doctor in this story. It's John Smith.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of to play into the whole, you don't know if it's the Doctor or Master thing, which is also sort of to play into the whole Doctor and Master, two sides of the same coin thing. But you know what it actually should have said is, obviously, drink more Ovaltine. I've seen the Christmas story,
right? Yeah, that would have been
pretty funny.
What it should have actually said was, buy more stories.
Buy more Big Finish.
No, it should have spelled out, all hail the big talking bird. Jacqueline's like, what the hell? And Frobisher walks in like, what's up, my dudes?
And then some dude shows up at the window, struck by lightning.
And from the scream, you can just tell it's Sylvester McCoy.
Yeah, a very distinct scream, as he did back in his run on the show.
You know, as you do.
As you do when you're the Doctor.
And then part 2 doesn't actually immediately pick up right there. I mean, it picks up there eventually, but it actually picks up with the framing narrative again, and the guy's like, so, who was the stranger?
Yeah, the hitman's like really into the story.
The Doctor's like, well, I guess you're just gonna have to find out. Cut back to story. And it's the Doctor. We already said it was, but yeah, it's the Doctor. Jacqueline's like, we should bring her inside, and Victor's like, no strangers.
Yeah, so Jacqueline and Victor go bug off to go do something else, and then the Doctor and John Smith have a sort of private chat. And this part was kind of annoying because it went on for a really long time where they were just discussing this philosophical
half of part 2.
BS. And they also try to make it literary, and they bring up crime and punishment and all this other stuff. And
they bring up Jekyll and Hyde, which makes sense.
Yeah, they bring up Jekyll and Hyde. And they bring up crime and punishment too, which I guess also kind of makes sense. But yeah, it felt kind of forced. It felt kind of forced.
Well, Jekyll and Hyde makes sense because they're trying to really... The story's trying to really lead you to believe that the Master's the Jekyll and the Hyde character and that the Master's actually the one killing off all the prostitutes. But then it throws a curveball at the end. It's not actually the Master who's killing all the prostitutes, and it's not actually the Master who's the Jekyll and the Hyde character either.
Well, kind of is.
Kind of.
They all
but
kind of are.
Yeah, I guess that's the point, is that everybody's got two
Except
faces.
Death. Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
well-
Death too, kind of, but
Yeah.
not really.
But, I mean, Death, like she says, is a shapeless, thoughtless entity. So, or idea, I think she says.
Yeah.
Yeah, Death is a she, by the way.
Yeah. Guess who it is? It's either Jacqueline or Jade. There's only 2 female characters in this. And only 3 male characters, so yeah, I guess it's not one of those things, just like the one token female, so.
Yeah, this is really small cost, surprisingly. But then again, it all takes place in one house.
And
Over
in
one night.
Yeah. Little did they all know when they walked into that house that it would all go horribly wrong.
Yeah. Well, so the doctor's like, well, the doctor doesn't know why he's there. I mean, he knows that John Smith is the master because it's kind of hard to avoid the fact
Well, he's saying
that
he
he's the
doesn't know
master,
why.
because he's horribly burned and scarred.
He's the doctor's about to sort of reveal some stuff, and then he realizes that the master lost his memory, and he's like, "Oh."
Yeah. So the doctor doesn't
Except he
know
doesn't do that
why,
at all.
but I think the doctor figures it out when he hears the maid's name is Jade, because as they make a point of saying in episode 3, green is the color of death. Jade is green.
Wow.
Jade is death.
Wow.
So I guess that's supposed to be a clue before it's revealed. Like
Yeah.
a clue
Story
that you can
felt
figure.
kind of like Clue, like the game Clue.
Yeah,
I think the master did it in the study with the
candlestick with the death. He physically wielded death. The person. He like whacked someone with a person.
Yeah.
Wow.
Great way to go. I would know.
Because you were the one
Just saying,
whacking
just
someone? Or were you like the
Was I the whacker or the wacky? Yeah, I was the wackest. So with that, it's pretty whack of me to say. But anyway, yeah, I kind of don't remember what happens next. I think Jacqueline and Victor show back up.
Well, they're having dinner. Well, they
Like
were
stuffed
having
venison.
dinner.
I think venison is deer meat. I'm not 100% sure.
I believe it is. I believe you're correct on that aspect. Or you think it's like dog meat?
It's cat meat.
Cat
That's what they did with
meat.
the cat.
I think it's about now where they actually do discover the cat. Splayed out and
Oh yeah, the cat died.
open and cut open like all the prostitute victims.
This is Nesbit died. No, that's in Chamber of Secrets.
You said Nesbit and all I thought of was Toy Story.
I think that was the cat's name from Harry Potter. It's Nesbit. I don't remember.
It was something that began with an N and ended in bit, so I think. Filch and Mrs. I think it was Mrs. Nesbit.
Anyway, this isn't a Harry Potter podcast, thank God.
It could be though.
No, please no.
So, yeah, the cat's dead, and Victor's like, it's haunting me. It always haunts me.
Yeah, this is the point where Victor's actor started really playing it up and getting not that good, honestly.
Yeah,
He was okay in the
Victor
beginning,
hams it up later on.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I guess you kind of feel for him a little bit. Come on, a little bit.
It felt like his lips were like 20 pounds. He was just trying to talk through them.
A little bit.
Not
I mean,
really.
later on, when you find out his wife has loved another man for their entire marriage, you kind of feel a little bit bad for him. That doesn't
not
justify what he
really.
does, but
No.
you kind of feel bad for him.
Well, that's actually not why he does what he does. He does
No.
what he does for a completely different reason. But no, I didn't really feel bad for any of the characters in this. The Hitman was honestly my favorite character until the big reveal at the end.
I mean, I felt a little bit bad for everybody in equality, so I guess at the end that means I didn't feel bad for anyone.
Well, no, not really. Which means you felt a little bad for all of them.
Yeah, because I feel like they all had their flaws and their demons that they were hiding, and their tragedies in their lives.
Yeah, they did, but I didn't care.
I mean, yeah, but when have you ever cared? So, it's par for the course here.
Yeah, Doctor Who's got to make me care one day. Me a real good emotional story that makes me care, writers.
Well, the reboot does that, but also sometimes strays into melodrama territory, so, there's a fine line to walk there. Anyway, at least I can say I cared. So the doctors, after finding the cat, they return to the study because the doctor, yells out. He's, being attacked by the house or something, and everything's just in disarray. And John Smith's all, do you really think that the doctor could have done this in the, 5 minutes that we left him?
Yeah, maybe. No.
Yeah, I guess it's supposed to be implied that the entire room was just
be surprised how much damage someone can do in 5 minutes. Also reminds me of Toy Story at the beginning. 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Whenever someone tells me that something's going to happen in 5 minutes, I always think of doing something that's going to take more than 5 minutes because of the big impact that scene left on me when I watched it when I was 4 years old. Yeah. You know the scene I'm talking about, right? Where he's going to leave in 5 minutes and he sets up all his green soldiers.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe that's why the soldiers are green and those classic toy soldiers because they represent death.
Yeah, maybe. Green is the color of death. Does that mean I represent death? If you didn't know, my last name is Green.
Is that a real thing, or is that something they just made up for this story?
I don't know.
I'm sure someone has considered green the color of death at some point in human history, so...
I feel like it actually probably was something in one of those ancient civilizations. The same ones that also considered purple the color of royalty and godliness, I guess.
That's kind of still a thing, but...
Yeah. I guess you could Google it. Check the show notes. So, yeah, the doctor's like, yeah, I think the house is attacking me. And Victor's like, as if a house could attack you. And
She's
then...
like, you never saw Monster House, have you?
No. Also, this is apparently in the future sometime.
Yeah.
Jacqueline...
Undisclosed amount of time in the future. She
doesn't recognize Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not that she doesn't recognize it. It's just that the doctor says, oh, it's something from far in your past.
Yeah.
It's you could not recognize it today.
Yeah, but, I mean, she still doesn't recognize the name. He says Jekyll and Hyde, and she's like, what?
Yeah.
And then he's like, from your distant past. Doctor also quotes Jekyll and Hyde, but that specific piece of audio from the whole thing was just so quiet, I couldn't tell what the heck the doctor was saying, so,
Yeah. I read Jekyll and Hyde when I was 7, and I didn't get it at all.
I haven't read it.
Crime and Punishment too, recently a newer translation, so not the one they quoted in this.
I was supposed to read Crime and Punishment for school, and
but you didn't.
I read a couple chapters of it, and
it's 700 pages, so yeah.
I have it inside. I could read it if I wanted it to, but I don't. I have to read a Doctor Who novel before next week. So
no, you should read it. Read my copy. Read the new translation. Supposedly more readable than the old one. I've read some of the old one too, and yeah, it is actually more readable in my opinion.
That's
should read it. It's
probably
really
something I should read then, it's because really the reason why I stopped reading it was because it was just really dense and boring. Kind of like the Scarlet Letter, which I somehow made it all the way through.
Yeah, but books are a discussion for next week. Probably.
The Book Club podcast. So, what's the cliffhanger to part 2?
I don't remember. 2 and 3 were kind of just a blur to me.
I remember the cliffhanger to part 3, because the cliffhanger to part 3 was it was actually the opposite of a big reveal. It was a really subdued, really small reveal.
I don't remember what that was either.
The cliffhanger to part 3 was that Jade was deaf.
Oh. Yeah, okay, that was kind of a big one. Well, you can kind of see it coming for a while. Yeah. When she starts talking with the death voice, so...
Well, so... The reveal in part... What is the cliffhanger to part 2?
I don't remember. Just skip over it. It's probably not that important.
I remember thinking it was interesting because it was different from the other cliffhangers, but I honestly don't remember what it was. Anyway, so the Doctor in part 3 tells a story about 2 young boys a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Literally, well, not literally, but a long time ago, far, far away.
Yeah.
about these
This
two
is
boys.
obviously him and the Master.
Yeah, it's obviously him and the Master, but he doesn't reveal who's who until the end of the story.
And I kind of wish, I guess we'll get more into this later, but I kind of wish they kept it a secret who killed him. But anyway, so in the story, it's the Doctor and the Master as kids, and they always dreamed of making it off Gallifrey. Can't blame them because it's a bombed out wasteland, except for that one city.
Well, so the Doctor mentions a stream running through a forest, and I was like, that must be in the
What stream of the forest?
that must be in the unbombed out region of Gallifrey, the mysterious still alive part of Gallifrey. But this was when they were kids, so it could have been
before it got bombed out. No, I don't think it was actually bombed out, but
it would have been like
it was.
400 years before we even saw the first Doctor, because when the first Doctor dies, the second Doctor picks up that 600-year diary or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think the first Doctor's journeys were covered 100 years. Well, maybe they did. Or maybe it doesn't matter. I don't know.
Like the first Doctor, unlike all the other Doctors, lived from childhood up to being an adult.
Yeah.
Because all the other Doctors, you regenerate into the adult state. So the first Doctor obviously then would have lived a longer time than the other ones because he grew up from being a child all the way to being this old man.
Yeah.
So he potentially could have lived for like 200 or 300 years.
Yeah.
And I think it's supposed to be implied that he is.
Yeah. Well, whatever. Anyway, yeah, so they have these big dreams of making it off the planet, and
as you do. When your society has time travel machines and has basically conquered all known laws of physics, what else is there to do?
Yeah, honestly not sure why this is such a big dream for them, because it's really within the realm of possibility. It's kind of like saying, man, I really hope I make it down the street when I get older.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a pretty good metaphor for what a comparative dream for us would be, making it down the street. But yeah, so they have these dreams, but there's this bully Torvik who's tormenting them, which is, standard kid stuff, supposedly.
Yeah, and apparently, usually he would bully one of them at a time for some reason, and the other one would just kind of sit there and wait for it to end. But then one day, one of them snaps and kills Torvik.
Yeah, but you're making it sound a lot more sinister than it actually was.
It was pretty sinister. They actually described it in a really sinister way, and that's one of the parts of this that I really liked.
That's fair. The Doctor describes how one of them The Doctor describes how one of them finally picked up a rock and smashed him over the head, and then cut to them not knowing what to do, and then they burn his body.
Yeah, and they never tell anyone.
I actually do feel like at the end of the story it is kind of up in the air which is which, because the Doctor claims that the Master was the one who killed the bully, but Death claims that
it was the Doctor.
Kind of spoilerish, but the Doctor killed him.
Because at first it was like the Doctor tells John Smith that you're the Master and you're the one who killed this guy, and they're like, oh, okay, it's the Master. No surprise there. But then later it's revealed that it's the Doctor, and it could have been either or, but I don't know. I guess I just felt like it would have played into the whole two sides of the same coin thing even better if they just totally kept it up in the air.
Well, so this is my second listen through, as I've said already. On this listen through, I paid a lot more attention to the verbiage and how the Doctor actually told the story, and when Death makes the big reveal, and both of them seem uncertain about remembering who's which. The Doctor doesn't even. I think he before he even reveals the Master was the one who kills the guy. The Doctor says that the other one lived in guilt and regret for the whole rest of his life. The one who didn't kill him.
Yeah.
And then when Death says it later that the Doctor was the one who killed Torvik, Death says this line that I thought was kind of weird. She says she could never remember if she remembered correctly the one who killed Torvik.
Yeah, because there's some more stuff later where they make a deal with Death or something.
So, I mean, my interpretation was always that Death was just trying to make the Doctor snap in the end by saying that he was the one who killed the bully and that it was the Master all along. That was always my interpretation, but I think you could see it either way. I feel like the intention is that it's supposed to be two quote-unquote definitive accounts that you just put stock in the one that you believe in.
Yeah, I actually think it was, now that I think about it a little more, I actually think it was the Doctor who did it because of the description of him picking up the rock. How I imagined it, I would have to go and listen to it again to make sure if this is 100% correct, but how I imagined it is the one of them was getting beat up, sort of near the riverbank, almost in the water. The other one
was being drowned.
Yeah, being drowned. Yeah, that's what was happening. And the other one picks up this rock, and when the doctor's telling the story, he gives this really detailed description of picking up the rock and walking over there and doing it. So I'm like, okay, it's probably him who did it, not the one.
I mean, yeah, but the doctor also gives a really detailed description of the water running down his throat through his nostrils.
Yeah, I guess.
Being
I don't
drowned.
know.
So
I still think it was the doctor.
I think it was the master, but it does seem in character for the doctor to, always stand up for the little man to stop the oppressor. It's kind of like the beginnings of the doctor type thing.
Yeah, I mean, no matter who did it, and I guess you can see it either way. I agree with that. It does play into their characters, right? Because this is when the doctor was just a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously now and throughout the entire show, he has this no-kill policy. Well, most of the time.
I think he attempts to stick to it, but it's not a hard and fast rule like Batman for him.
And this might have sort of been the beginnings of that, where he tries to do what he thinks is the right thing, and he ends up killing this person. So throughout the rest of his life, he tries to do what he thinks is the right thing, but he doesn't want to go that far.
Yeah, that's a totally fair interpretation, and I think even even if you buy into death, the whole deal that the doctor made with death later on, I don't know.
Yeah, listen to it yourself and make your own decision.
And I kind of like that you can see it both ways, and either way, it's valid. And I think also each interpretation brings something different to the story. Like if you believe that the doctor was the one who did it, then obviously you're going to put a lot more stock into that into part 4 in general, actually, with the doctor kind of being surprised at this and kind of being guilt-ridden about everything. Whereas if you believe the master did it, you kind of side with the doctor, you just want, the master was just a misguided kid and he just wants his friend back, so.
Yeah. Well, there's this whole thing about authority in this, right? There's that line I think it's in part 2 where, maybe it's I don't know what part it's in actually, but the hitman goes, he starts trying to tell the story and he's like, oh, this is what's going to happen next. And the doctor's like, who's telling the story here? And it's him, right? He's the author, so he has the authority, right? And I guess this is getting sort of into, unfortunately, literary theory territory, which is just the most bogus, stupid BS ever conceived by mankind. But
thankfully, this isn't an academic podcast.
Yeah, thank God.
Any theories you come up with are valid here.
Well, no, not okay. I don't think you know what literary theory is, and I think you should keep it that way. But
yeah, I want to keep it that way. But please go on with your statement. I'm actually curious to hear what you're going to say.
I kind of forgot what I was going to say now. But there's always the whole thing where the person telling the story has the authority, right? So the doctor is telling this story to this guy, and in the story there's this other story so do you believe him or not? And then that's the thing at the end, right? It sort of goes against the school, I guess, of thought that says yes, the author is the definitive opinion on the work or the book or the story or whatever it is, but this sort of goes against it, no, it's actually not right, because it's death telling the truth, is the doctor telling the truth. Do they really have the authority over the story that they're telling themselves? Well, they don't know, so we don't know. And I guess this is sort of more like the not really, but the reception theory camp, if you know what that is, which if you don't look it up.
Well, there's also a huge theme of free will versus fate in this story, and I think the moral of the story is free will doesn't exist, but anyway.
It was kind of forced. Maybe you'll have to listen to it again, but yeah.
Well, because the death is manipulating the whole thing, and obviously death has free will because death is controlling the events, but the point is that, the little man doesn't have any free will, so it's kind of like, when whoever killed the bully, did they really...
Whoever... See, even you subconsciously think it was the doctor. No, I'm just kidding.
Clearly. Whoever killed the bully, the events that transpired then and afterwards, did they really even have a choice? Because, death at that point also reveals, we've gotten way off track of explaining the plot, but death explains, after that, they made a deal and the master became Death's champion in much the same way that the doctor became Time's champion.
Yeah. We also skipped the part where the doctor reveals that this was all part of his plan, the master getting amnesia, that is, and being stationed
less
here.
of a plan, more of a deal.
More of a deal, yeah. But it was kind of sort of played into the whole Seventh Doctor thing where he makes these deals and plans that he has to follow up on years later.
Well, so this plan is actually the doctor trying to be kind. I think, in his own
Wow,
weird way.
what a completely out of character and surprising move.
That's not out of character and surprising at all. But because the Doctor's trying to give the Master a normal life for 10 years, because whether you believe he killed the bully and he's doing it out of regret, or if you believe the Master killed the bully and the Doctor just wants his friend back, either way, the Doctor's trying to give the Master a regular life for 10 years instead of going around killing all these people.
10 years seems like a really long time for this plan. Like, maybe 3 years would have been a little better.
Well, so the Doctor actually gets a pretty good deal out of it then. He gets 10 years out of Death. Death actually references that whole thing about the Seventh Doctor becoming this whole master planner, because Death says, like, oh, you don't have fun anymore, you don't mix up your metaphors, and you don't play your spoons anymore, you just go around trying to fix all your previous wrongs in this lifetime.
Yeah, I don't remember what it came of that conversation. Probably nothing, but...
Well, so this is when Death first reveals herself, so at the end of part 3. It's just like really bombshell reveal, because after the Doctor tells his story, Jacqueline makes this confession that she stole humbugs when she was a kid, and Victor says this thing like, this has been going the whole story of this whole theme of hypocrisy, because Victor thinks that sometimes the victims in all the killings, all the prostitutes, might have deserved it.
I wonder who killed them.
And John Smith has been going on like, does morality exist? Does there always have to be a motive for killing?
Yeah, John Smith. The other ones are like, oh man, I collected some humbugs, and then John Smith is being this pretentious jerk in the corner.
Well, I think it plays into when you find out, he's the master, and the whole reason he's got amnesia, like, does the killer always have to have a motive, plays into, does the master always have a motive? And it seems to vary wildly from story to story.
Depends who's writing
it. Depends who's writing the story. But the better ones usually have the master realize at the end of the story that what he was doing was wrong, and he teams up with the Doctor. Those are generally the Roger Delgado master stories.
Yeah. AKA the best master.
So far.
Yeah, so far, and probably in total, but...
Depends on the masters we've got in the reboot. Depends on what you think of them, anyway. And what you think of each of the appearances, for which one of them has varied wildly in characterization between his multiple appearances, but anyway.
So yeah, they're sort of playing up this whole thing like they all have their own inner master, because John Smith's inner evil voice is the master, obviously. So yeah, it's revealed at some point that Victor was the one killing the prostitutes. Surprise!
It's revealed now. The start of part 4. So part 4, like, Death shows up and kind of throws this huge like bomb into the room.
Yeah, I really liked this.
Messes everything up.
Yeah, I liked the setting of part 4 because it's in this weird, like, tripped out dimension, I guess.
Yeah.
Kind of confusing, and, like, the characters are all confused, and they don't know what's going on. Yeah. Yeah,
so Death drops these huge bombshells. First she drops that, John Smith is the master, first off. And then she drops that Victor's the one who's been killing all the prostitutes. And then she also drops that Jacqueline has been in love with John since before she got married to Victor, I guess. And she reveals that this is when she reveals that the Doctor was the one who made the deal with her to put John Smith in the town, so he's the one who put John there.
Yep.
And then she's like, oops, I let the cat out of the bag, and there's this huge explosion, and they're all kind of separated into this dark, weird void.
Yeah.
So the first thing that happens is the Doctor encounters the Master, and it was revealed that part of the deal for the Doctor was forgiving John this regular life for 10 years, was that at the end of the 10 years, the Doctor would have to kill John, the Master.
Yeah.
So that was the deal. The deal was
remember that part.
10 years, but then you have to kill the Master at the end.
Yeah. And he couldn't do it.
Yeah,
so,
obviously. He's close. He's looming over John with a knife. And the Doctor's like, but I can't do it.
Wasn't it a poker?
Yeah, it might have been No.
I don't remember.
I think it was the knife. I think it was the knife that Jacqueline... Okay, well, so we left off this critical scene. It actually is critical because it explains why Victor
where Jacqueline dies.
Well, no, we're not there yet. We left off the critical scene that explains when Victor starts to hate his wife, which is when Jacqueline and John come up with this contrived plan to have John threaten to kill Jacqueline in order to get the Doctor to tell John who he is. And the doctor's just like, do it then. Do it. And John's like, damn it, I can't, because you know I'm not the master yet. And the doctor's like, yeah, it was pretty obvious, so...
So, yeah. And then Victor gets pissed, like,
Obviously.
wow, you side with John and not me. Wow.
Well, also, Victor
If
loves
So
Jacqueline.
he does this a lot more. Wow. Wow.
Well, Victor loves Jacqueline, his wife, obviously, because she's his wife. And he's upset
Yeah,
that
doesn't
she
mean
would...
anything.
That's true, as you find out, because Jacqueline doesn't love Victor. But anyway, she's upset because she would put her life in danger just to try and prove a point for John or something. And he's like, why would you do that? But yeah, so that's kind of like the genesis of his...
The Daleks. No.
upsettedness with her later.
I mean, she could have just been like, why do it? Because we're his best friends in town. Like, at this point, I mean, yeah, it's revealed later that she loves him and not her husband. But, like, at this point, does he really need to get so mad over it? I don't think so. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I think a key point of Victor's whole character is that he's just kind of whack. So, after the doctor can't kill the master, he realizes a way out of this whole situation. The master has actually pretended he doesn't love Jacqueline because he wants Jacqueline to leave to save her. And the doctor realizes that this means that John Smith must love Jacqueline, and that this means, ergo, that
The master can feel love, which he hasn't felt in hundreds of years or something like that.
yeah, the doctor says that when the master became the master, he didn't have, or he hasn't loved anybody ever.
Which was supposedly, I guess, like the moment Torvik died is when he became the master, so...
Yeah, because of the guilt and the overwhelming shame and whatever.
yeah. Again, whether he was the one, whether the doctor or the master killed
Yeah.
him, shouldn't really matter, I guess.
So the doctor says that giving him the capacity to feel love was never part of his deal with death, so they can use that as a way out because it would prove that the master's not inherently always a bad person, and it would get him out of the deal, I guess. So they're like, if we go save Jacqueline, you can live as John Smith and love Jacqueline, and everything will be pretty great. And to be fair, it's actually
out of the way.
yeah. To be fair, it's a pretty good idea, and if it had worked, would have been pretty great. Unfortunately, Victor snaps Jacqueline's neck, so
Yeah.
it's really brutal too because you hear it snap.
I didn't remember the snap, but
Well, so they
I was kinda
draw
zoned-
it out
I didn't really
quite a
like
bit.
part 4 because of the whole love triangle thing. It was just like, yeah, whatever.
Well, it's supposed to be like the master can feel feelings. Whoa.
Yeah, but
And Victor's super upset, so he's like hugging Jacqueline. She's like, I care for you, but I don't love you. And then he snaps her neck, and it's really gruesome because you hear the snap, and you kind of don't see it coming. I mean, you kind of see it coming because you know he's going to kill her, but for a second he's like, forgive me for what I'm going to do. And he's like, it sounds like he's going to leave, but then he just snap, and you're like, okay. And then John Smith starts screaming, like, why would you do that? And then cut to death freezing time, and the master reasserts control, and
yeah.
they have a discussion now about this. The doctor's desperately trying to get the master to become John Smith again, going so far as to only call him John and not the master.
Master's like, nah, I'm good.
Kind of feel like this whole story is made better by the fact that Jeffrey Beavers has like a really menacing voice.
Yeah, well, they were all good actors in this. Victor
Yeah.
was questionable, but still
Yeah.
pretty okay.
But yeah, so master's being all menacing, and the doctor's like, was Death really your master? Were you really his master, Death? And she's like, yes. And the master's like, shut up, woman.
So I kind of forget what happens next exactly, but there's some time loop
Well, so
shenanigans.
the doctor makes a new deal with Death.
The New Deal.
He FDRs the whole thing. He puts the people back to work in Perfugium, and he makes Perfugium great again. Anyway, no, he makes a new deal with Death, which is to give the master a choice. And that was the deal, to give the master a choice, to be John Smith or the master. And Death says, okay, I'll call on you later for something to, because it's a deal. So she's like, I'll call
Yeah.
on you later for your part of the deal.
Yeah, so she resets the clock on that evening, and Jacqueline and Victor arrive at John Smith's house again.
Yeah,
and
but Death has informed John of the deal. And
Yeah.
the deal is, if John kills Victor, he becomes the master, but Jacqueline gets to live. But if John lets the events of the night play out as they did and lets Jacqueline die, he can remain as John Smith, but Jacqueline dies.
Jacqueline's dead.
So
that's that, and
they don't tell you what he does.
Yeah, they don't tell you what he does. I think he decides to become the master.
I think he does, but not because he wants to become the master, but because he truly does love Jacqueline and he does it to be selfless.
I don't know why he does it, but that's just what I thought.
Because John Smith loved Jacqueline, I think John Smith would do it to save Jacqueline.
Nah, I don't know.
But
that's just what I think, is that he becomes the master.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think the same thing. I'm just explaining why I think it.
So meanwhile, the hitman is like eating popcorn and crying.
The hitman's like, so what do you do? And the doctor's like, I don't know. Death zapped me out of the area. I like to imagine, because the doctor getting hit by lightning in the beginning was obviously Death zapping the doctor. And I like to imagine the doctor strikes this deal with Death, and Death just immediately zaps him to the end of the 10 years. And he's like, damn it! It's been like 10 seconds for me.
Damn it. It's from Robot Chicken, I found out what it was from.
But yeah, so he's like, I don't know what he did. And they don't tell you what he did, but he tries to explain to Jacqueline, like, oh, forgive me for what I'm going to do, and which could be interpreted both ways.
And Hitman's death.
Yeah, because it was revealed the Hitman. Well, I thought the Hitman was dead. Yeah, the Hitman is death. I thought you said the Hitman's death, as in the Hitman died, and I was like, no. No, the Hitman is death.
Yeah.
So like, first the doctor's like, what do you think Death's punishment would have been for me? And he's like, well, you couldn't kill the most evil man in the universe, so obviously the punishment would be, killing an innocent person. And the doctor's like, yep, so you want to give me your rifle now? And the guy's like, do you want me to give you the rifle? And he's like, no, not really. No, really rather not kill some innocent person.
Well, I mean, he's a politician. How innocent could he be?
Well, yeah, see, that was the part where I was like, well, I guess he's not there to kill the president. He's this assassin. Well, see, that's the thing, because who would this assassin by trade, by the way, be there to kill if they were innocent? Because they would have had to do something to get whoever hired this assassin upset at them, right?
Well, I mean, it's also Death, so maybe she's just kind of hanging out there.
It's also, like, plays into how would Death define innocent? Not having killed anyone? I don't know. That seems like something Death would use to define innocence.
I guess it's just a story, so we can just say, like, all right, the politician's innocent.
Yeah, well, Death's like, I'm gonna go kill an innocent little girl now. And the doctor's like,
have fun with that. No, he doesn't do
He doesn't say that, but Death leaves and he says something like, I will save you one day, my old friend.
Yeah.
And it ends with the master cackling as the end credits come in.
Yeah.
So I really like this story. Probably my favorite audio that I've listened to.
Wow. I thought it was just okay.
Hey, your favorite audio is The Holy Terror. So
No, I like Valley of Death more than The Holy Terror.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. So do I.
Some of the things I liked this, I guess. I liked the trippiness in part 4 where they're zapped into another dimension. That was pretty cool. I really liked part 1. Part 1 was my favorite, where they start setting up this mystery. But I didn't like how they resolved the mystery, because they tried to play it up like, oh, the prostitute's dying, and the whole thing was like a supernatural thing, and it has something to do with the master and the lost memories and whatever. But then Death just shows up and is like, oh yeah, it was Victor. That was kind of a weird thing there.
It is kind of supernatural, because when Victor's holding Jacqueline, the Doctor and the Master both say that Death was controlling Victor.
Yeah, they all have their own inner other sides, I guess.
And Death even says that with the Master not working for her, she had to find other people to do the Master's job for him and kill all these people, so...
Yeah, it was just kind of a weird curveball. They're like, oh, by the way, it was Victor who killed them all.
Yeah, but her kind of throwing the grenade into this party, I kind of liked that, because it kind of twisted the entire story on its head.
Yeah. I didn't like I actually kind of hated the love triangle, too. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I liked this because I liked the Doctor and the Master, honestly. I liked their relationship. I liked the way that they played up something that they'd alluded to in the classic series but never stated, which was that the Master and the Doctor came from the same beginnings and kind of like one
Killed
event.
someone.
Yeah, one event kind of set them on divergent paths in the universe, and that, you know, at the end of the day, they're still friends and they still can't kill each other.
Yeah, you know, a lot of stories have someone being tormented, or like their entire character is defined by like they killed someone in the past, and usually it's never good. But like for some reason here, I thought it actually fit that the Doctor and the Master killed this person.
Yeah.
Crime and Punishment is like one of the other few examples where it actually works too. So,
Yeah.
well, he kills the person in the story in that like 50 pages in, which might as well be before the story even starts. So,
yeah, because the real story doesn't start till people start dying. But yeah, and also this isn't like a typical Doctor Who story, obviously. It's not the Doctor comes in and deposes some maniacal maniac. It's the Doctor in a house with 3 people with this crazy nonsense going on. And the Doctor kind of set it all in motion, you know, unwittingly, you know. He didn't expect that John Smith would make friends and that Jacqueline and Victor would be there that night, but he did put John in Perfugium.
yeah.
But yeah, I just feel like it really builds on the Master and the Doctor's relationship in a good way, and for that I really appreciate it. And I appreciate what it tried to do with the whole story, set in a house, mysterious things going on, and Death being the ultimate villain. He really likes Death, by the way. She's pretty cool.
Now, see, after, like, Death was cool, the whole Death voice thing, like, right as she showed up, but then, like, in part 4, they did this weird thing where they started having her use, like, slang and being like, nope, and, like, I'm just a pretty face or something, or she's like, not just a pretty face, and I don't know, it didn't really fit her character, in my opinion.
Yes, because it's Death Jade and not Death, the weird voice.
Yeah, but I don't know, it made her seem less menacing to me.
Really? Because it made her seem more menacing to me that Death was just so casual about killing people and
I guess you could
manipulating all these events, and just another Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. for her.
Typical Thursday night for Shia LaBeouf. No, okay.
Shia LaBeouf is Death, obviously.
Shia surprise. Anyway, yeah, no, I guess you could see it either way, but yeah, I kind of wish they kept up the more formal Death.
That's fair. That's fair. There's a couple references in this story that I thought were interesting. There's a reference to the next story called Zagreus. I don't know if you listened to the Next Time trailer for it at the end of the story.
No, I listened to it on Spotify, so there was no trailer.
Yeah, so Zagreus, I don't know what it's about, but it's this huge, massive 3-hour-long epic that Big Finish released for their 50th story about this enemy called Zagreus, and it has the 8th Doctor, and I think 5, 6, and 7 make cameo appearances.
Huh.
And there's a nursery rhyme about Zagreus getting in your head and eating you when you're asleep. And Death kind of sings one of the lines from the nursery rhyme in the story, and she's like, I wonder what put that in my head.
Oh, yeah. Wow, that product placement.
Well, because it's supposed to, I don't know, really, I don't know the specifics of Zagreus, but it's kind of supposed to be the culmination of this 4-part thing they had going. They did.
Yeah, that worked out real well with Trial of a Time Lord.
Well, it's because this is a very loose thing where the tying element is just that they're like character studies into villains, because they did one for Omega and they did one for Davros and they did this one for the Master, and the next one is Zagreus. I don't know how well it works out, but apparently Zagreus is brutally boring. We'll get there eventually. And also there was a reference to Bernice Summerfield, who is a companion of the 8th Doctor and an archaeologist, but she wrote a book that John Smith references called... he thinks it's about humans, but the title is really clever because it's like, people, 2 hearts, 1 mind. And I was like, it's Time Lords. Time Lords have 2 hearts and 1 mind. But anyway, that was all I wanted to mention. I just thought those 2 little references were kind of neat. And also Death's reference to the Doctor not playing his spoons anymore, having fun. Yeah, Doctor kind of went off a cliff when Mel left. Anyway, that wraps up audios for a while.
Hopefully.
I enjoy audios, but I'm honestly kind of glad that they're over.
Yeah, kind of glad we're having on-screen material soon.
Yeah.
We actually have to pay attention with audios, and I hate paying attention.
Yeah, see, my problem. This is going to be super brief because we're ending up the episode. But for the TV show, I set a schedule every week. I'm like, I'm going to watch one episode this day, one episode that day. And I stick to it every week. With audios, I'm like, I keep... Through these audios we've been listening to, I've been pushing it back and back. I'm like, I can listen to 2 parts on Saturday, 2 parts on Sunday, or like, I can listen to 3 parts on Saturday, 1 on Friday. You know,
I can listen to the whole thing 5 minutes before we record.
you know.
No, I do that with the TV show too. Like,
Yeah, see,
with
I
audios
don't.
and the TV show.
I don't. I'm just saying I'm glad to be able to get to something I can just sit down and watch instead of like putting off. Anyway, yeah, book next week, then 2 TV shows, then Rose. So you can email us at thedoctordeck@vegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters. Do you think Torvik
Deserved it.
Torvik did nothing wrong? Who do you think killed Torvik? Was it the master? Was it the doctor?
Was
We'll never
was
know.
it someone
It's
else?
just some mysterious thing. It was the Rani. Spoilers, it was the Rani. It was the monk. That bumbling fool could never kill anybody intentionally. Ah, that's not true.
It was the monk, and he feels no regret over it. Meanwhile, the doctor and the master have been tormented for 800 years.
Oh, God. Anyway, you can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. Still haven't got used to saying that, by the way. Maybe it's because for 150 episodes we said iTunes.
Maybe it's because Apple still calls it iTunes.
Bloody hell, Apple. You can find us at Trust Your Doctor. Please leave a rating if you like the show, or a comment telling us what you don't like, because we're trying to make the show better all the time.
Speak for yourself. Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. And next time, we're reading Mad Dogs and Englishmen. But until then, the end.